to the
Good
Refine
afternoon, ma'am.
Investor. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Refine Investor webinar series. Just wanting to share the rules of engagement. Our coordinators will just ensure that all the guests are on mute, both their mics and their videos. I imagine this would have been done from the central control. If they haven't done so, if you'll please just oblige us to do it from your side, but I believe it's been done already. Okay, so Chioma, it's you that I was saying. We would like to open up. I know that obviously we're, as people are calling it the new normal, but we do believe that there's still some things that are fundamental. And, since we're broadcasting from Nigeria, we would like to kick off with the national anthem, which will be led by Chioma. So Chioma, over to you.
All right, ma'am. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, rather. Arise, O compatriots, Nigerians, come, obey to serve our fatherland with love and strength and faith. The lay of our heroes past shall never be in vain. To serve with heart and might, one nation bound in freedom, peace and unity. God bless Nigeria.
God bless Nigeria.
Yes,
God bless you, Chioma.
Yes,
thank you very much for that rendition of the Nigerian national anthem. We're grateful. Thank you, Chioma. We did say that even though we are in very unique times, uncertain times, lots of anxiety, lots of uncertainty, lots of complexity, some would say, and perhaps an ambiguous time. But the one thing that is, that we can all agree is that there's a lot of uncertainty. Some may actually say that there is some measure of volatility. This is taken from the VUCA acronym, which tends to refer to times such as these. And, that said, we do believe that there are some fundamental things that remain, and certainly paying homage and also reminding ourselves of the words of hope from our national anthem. With that being said, I'd like us to move right along. The Refine Investor series is also one of those, what we would refer to as a fundamental thing that at Fine & Country we've continued to do for the last 6 years. The Refine Investor series is a series of conversations and events that Fine & Country put together along with its knowledge partners over the years to, as it were, provide an accurate and current roadmap, for stakeholders in the industry. We do believe that, especially in times of uncertainty and in difficult business terrain such as Nigeria presents, that it's important to continue to inspire confidence in investors. And the way that we've done this over the years is to provide information, to provide intelligence, to provide some insight, so that people are able to make informed decisions. And, so what's showing right now on the screen is the most recent Refine Investor series, which was held only February, literally 3 months or so ago, right here in Lagos. I recall 2 years ago going to the UK, where we took Nigeria to the world, as it were, using the platform of the Refine Investor series, and along with various developers, investors, and stakeholders from Nigeria, we went to the UK with our chairman at the time, His Excellency Mr. Peter Obi, along with various business leaders and real estate industry stakeholders. And the whole essence of that trip was to also inspire confidence amongst the Nigerians in diaspora, entrepreneurs, professionals, and other people. We've always believed that confidence is at the heart of real estate investment and indeed in the economy. And so once again, we're here, even though just a few months ago in February, we were at the Civic Center hosting the Refined Investor Series, providing a roadmap for 2020. Indeed, we did feel that, you know, as a country leading up to COVID, no one knew anything about COVID or didn't realize the impact it was going to have. It did seem like something that was far off in Wuhan, in China, and, you know, in other parts of the world, but not in Africa. Fast forward in March, you know, we started obviously to recognize that it is a global village. And in February, when we're laying down the roadmap and the providing directions for the industry, we find that most of the things that were discussed still remain relevant. However, obviously, since then, we've had the global pandemic, and now we also have the fast dwindling oil revenues for a country that obviously relies on it. So various factors, and so we're back again to have that conversation and to advise and provide some sort of a roadmap for investors, you know, to take a cue as to how to navigate their investments, not just in real estate, but just, you know, what sort of perspective investors and stakeholders should adopt. And we have invited a very eminent panel. We have Dr. Andrew Nevin, who I mentioned because he was with us in February, you know, with Price Waterhouse. He's the chief economist. And we've, in the last 2 or 3 years, worked with Price Waterhouse as knowledge partners, and they've contributed actively to the Refined Investor Series. Thank you very much, Dr. Andrew Nevin. Also, we have Professor Fabian Ajogu, SAN, who's a principal partner at Kina Partners. And he's here, obviously a legal luminary and also a professor at the Lagos Business School. And he will be obviously sharing from the legal perspective. And also, in addition, he's actively involved in real estate from the point of view of sitting as a chair of a real estate company in Nigeria. We also have Mrs. Bola Adeshola, who is the Vice Chairman, Africa, for Standard Chartered Bank. Herself a real estate enthusiast, I would say, and of course an investor, I'm sure, who is here as the chairperson of this particular Refined Investor Series. And it's interesting because when we put chairperson, you know, we looked and thought, it's a webinar, why do we have a chairperson? But, you know, she's going to go first, and she's also going to be speaking from an opportunities point of view and giving us a global overview. So we're going to run right along with Mrs. Bola Adeshola, who is going to be speaking to us on the theme RETHINK, REIMAGINE, and REFOCUS, and opportunities perspective. Mrs. Adeshola, please.
Thank you very much, Udo, and good afternoon to all participants, both in Nigeria and across the world. Thank you to Fine & Country for inviting me to this webinar. Can you hear me? Yeah. In the Refined Investor Series, I know, Udo, you've been trying to get me for years to attend, and I've never been physically present. So this time, no excuses at all. And you know, for me, you know, the fun times we've had hanging out and animatedly discussing contemporary and emerging issues in the real estate sector, even when we're broke, but we just, you know, fantasize about what could be. So my mandate today as chairman is to share some thoughts around perspectives on opportunities in crisis. And indeed, there's no better time than now to rethink, reimagine, and refocus our lives and our businesses on what the future holds for us. With the advent of this most terrible and virulent strain of coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, everything has changed. It is scary and very daunting. I'm going to zip fairly quickly as Udo has reduced the time allocated to me to speak. So please stay with me.
I've not reduced your time, please. Go right ahead. The world is undeniably
experiencing a black swan event. And 3 typical characteristics of a black swan event include its rarity, its extreme impact, and retrospective predictability. And I believe that COVID-19 ticks all the boxes of such an event. And like almost all black swan events in history, whether precipitated by economic or financial factors, or even a health crisis, or the onset of a sudden war, after the slump, there is recovery. Of course, the severity of the current health crisis on economies across the world has been compounded by other global economic factors, which I'm sure Andrew will talk about in his presentation. Much has been said in recent weeks, especially in the now very common webinars that many are hooked on about strategies for recovery. We are certain that recovery will happen, but we're not sure about when and how. And of course, the further the pandemic persists, the greater its impact on the world economy. I believe that the extent of the aftermath will most likely be kindest on individuals and businesses that are seeking what opportunities could be lurking in the midst of the crisis. Therefore, whilst we focus on our lives and our livelihoods and even our liberty in the midst of the lockdown, we need to think smart. Surely we shouldn't waste this crisis as we ponder on our personal and organizational recovery. Now, if I follow the overarching strapline of the refined investor series, which is Rethink, Reimagine, Refocus, let's ponder together on the possibilities that may exist as we prepare, plan, and reposition ourselves as stakeholders in the midst of the novel coronavirus crisis. So first, rethinking. There's a proverb that says necessity is the mother of invention. Given the massive hit on the pockets of people and on the finances of businesses, discerning and smart minds are already reinventing themselves and rethinking their respective situations. So savvy tailors and fashion designers are now making masks and PPE, caterers and restaurants are actively delivering food, and chemists are even considering drug manufacturing. So there's no reason why stakeholders in the real estate market should not also be rethinking their strategies, pivoting in the direction of the opportunities that may also lie in the sector. But who are the stakeholders? Simply put, all of us. Individuals need a roof over their heads to live in. Many businesses will still need offices despite work at home. Developers build these homes on commercial premises. Manufacturers will need factories and warehouses. Even e-commerce companies will require logistics, sorting, and dispatch centers. Mortgage providers are also critical stakeholders and many other stakeholders as well. So what do smart people do now? As H.G. Wells, the prolific English writer, said, adapt or perish, now as ever, is nature's inexorable imperative. So as we rethink the real estate sector, a starting point would be to explore the key typical drivers of the sector. These drivers include market forces, economic factors, and business confidence. Subsets of these drivers, which weigh heavily on property markets, include interest rates and access to finance, unemployment and real income, government policies, state of infrastructure, yields on investment, population, demographics, location, occupancy rates, quality of property, and I'm sure many others. All these factors both influence demand and supply sides of the sector and the real estate ecosystem as a whole. So smart thinking investors in residential properties should take a holistic view of the entire market and consider the impact of some or all of these drivers, even on commercial, retail, and industrial real estate. With a black swan event of this magnitude, the necessity for a deep dive is imperative on stakeholders in this sector. Government interventions, both fiscal and monetary, to support the economy, business, and employment are intended to catalyze and support overall recovery. It is unlikely, however, that given current realities and priorities, that there will be any specific intervention for the real estate sector. In any case, real estate remains a key store of value and a significant long or short-term asset class in an investor's portfolio. As discerning and refined property investors, let's not forget that discounts typically exist in a buyer's market. Cash is king, more so now than ever. As people's lifestyles and spending preferences change due to the looming recession, some may need to dispose of real estate in order to meet their payment obligations. So there will definitely be bargains to be picked up. Even with debt service moratorium graciously offered by some banks, the first being Standard Chartered, long-term debt sustainability challenges in the face of job losses may result in an uptick in property supply. Bargains could also be picked up as committed property purchasers may no longer be able to meet milestone payments on off-plan or new build properties, and as such, put such properties on the market for sale. Someone once said, don't wait to buy real estate and wait. What this means is that opportunistic transactions will always arise where you can profit from wise investment decisions in the long or short term. Even more bargains may exist from sellers who, taking a view that the Naira may depreciate, decide to sell and externalize their proceeds as a way of hedging their assets. So what other opportunities may exist? Warren Buffett, one of the world's most successful investors of all time, said, widespread fear is your friend as an investor because it serves to bargain purchases. Whether we're talking about socks or stocks, I like buying a quality merchandise when it is marked down. So property transactions will happen even in this crisis, although it probably in slower motion. Opportunities also exist for tenants. The landlord's greatest fear now is vacancy of his or her property. These short-term challenges call for flexibility by rental property owners. A tenant, especially one who's cash-strapped by pay cut, job loss, or other COVID-19 related challenges, should consider approaching his landlord to negotiate the terms of the lease, especially if the renewal is due soon. Best for a landlord to even offer a discount than have a void in rental of his or her property. So in rethinking his situation, the developer may consider dropping prices and adopt innovative marketing strategies as valuations decline in a depressed market. They may also need to rework the terms of their construction loans with their bankers. So there's a lot to rethink in terms of one personal situation. But as we rethink our situation, we need to also ponder what the future holds. And this brings me to the second pillar of the Refined Investor series, which is reimagine. Now let's reimagine. Let's reimagine the future of work. Let's reimagine the future of business. Let's reimagine life after COVID-19. Let us gaze into a crystal ball for a moment. And I'm really excited even as I'm reading this out now. And it brings to mind something Oprah Winfrey once said. When I look into the future, it's so bright, it burns my eyes. So you may wonder why I'm animated and optimistic about the future and the future of real estate, but I really am. First, before dawn breaks comes intense darkness. And currently there's a shadow of darkness across the world, even as COVID-19 abates and abounds. And this second, and then again, light can only shine in this darkness. So please let us follow and explore the light that I see shining in the real estate sector. This is where reimagining may begin. What do I see and what assumptions should I consider about the future, short-term, medium-term, long-term? So please reimagine with me as I look at the sector through a kaleidoscope. In the medium term, the world of work remains predominantly work from home. Work style will be flexible and the home office becomes de rigueur. So live, work, play developments or integrated living will be the future. Less formal office requirements and more informal and agile workspaces. As isolation pressures increase and mental health issues escalate, the demand for co-workspaces or work hubs increases. A basic requirement in a home will be collaborative technology to facilitate work from home. Home designs will require the inclusion of a study space all wired up for work. And this is me just imagining. Post-COVID-19 pandemic, we may see young adults who live with their parents now wanting to move out for work privacy reasons, or even to prevent the possible scare of putting their older family members at any health risk arising in future. With sustainability now top of the agenda for most corporates, smart or green buildings will be in demand to fulfill SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, and SDG 13, climate action. So health, safety, and environment, or HSC, will therefore be a key factor in demand preferences for real estate. As more people work from home, will restaurants be incorporated into multi-tenanted real estate development, in addition to the swimming pools and gyms that developers now provide? Through my kaleidoscope, I'm still imagining. With COVID-19, thankfully, though late in the day, food security has been elevated to a critical sector in the country, so there will be some changing requirements in the commercial and industrial real estate in response to this. The demand for specialized agricultural real estate infrastructure will increase. So warehouses for storage, sorting, packing, preservation of agro-produce will be required. The CBN COVID-19 fund is to support companies either in what government terms essential sectors or those who want to pivot their businesses to those sectors. Many businesses will therefore veer into manufacturing sector, e.g. drugs, packaging, and so on. Plug and play multi-let industrial parks are likely to spring up, probably on the outskirts of cities. The pandemic has unmasked a lot of deficiencies in our healthcare industry in Nigeria. So demand for building and designing modern purpose-built healthcare facilities and redesigning existing ones will increase. Please stay with me as I can see another lens reflecting other opportunities in my kaleidoscope mirror. With a boom in home delivery by caterers and restaurants, will catering hubs be required, fully equipped and renting space to caterers by the day? These should best be located, obviously, close to residential or commercial areas. E-commerce will flourish, so retail chains will rethink their real estate strategy with smart retail hub and spoke arrangements. Service providers will need more of pick-up, drop-off centers with less square footage. Logistics companies are likely to bloom and flourish. So what will their real estate needs be? Warehouses and so on. With remote learning likely to gain adoption to some extent, do student hostels have to be near the campus, or could they be in more cost-effective locations? As banks play catch-up to the likes of Standard Chartered, who had long realized that bricks and mortar banking were a thing of the past, there's likely to be a surplus and surfeit of commercial real estate premises as banks close branches. Given the very good location of many of these branches, to what use can these locations be converted to in the new normal? That's a strategic acquisition opportunity staring us in the face. With less travel in the short to medium term, hotel occupancy will be low, but what are the temporary options to modify and fill these rooms? What about event centers and halls? Could they become remote learning centers, all wired up with collaborative technology for students? Tenants, landlords, developers, purchasers, buyers, investors, partners, in fact, all stakeholders in the real estate industry and its ecosystem should be reimagining the future. I'm so excited, my eyes are actually really burning. I can imagine you those sitting in front of me and us having one of these brainstorm sessions where eyes are continuously. So real estate demands will change. Expectations will put pressure on developers to think innovatively. Investor preferences will be enhanced. Traditional residential real estate investors will even begin to consider commercial or industrial real estate investments. Strategic investments in other parts of the country will be on offer to those who typically are only invested in places like Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. Truly, these opportunities are there for the taking by strategic and discerning investors, those who can envision the future and make it happen. I know some may say that I'm fantasizing, and where will all this money come from to capitalize on these opportunities? That's a good question. And I don't have a straight solution, as the appropriate answer depends on the opportunity pursued, the investment model proposed, and the bankability of the specific business plan. As Dwight Eisenhower, former US president, once said, plans are nothing, planning is everything. So as we gaze into the future and envision what the new normal will be like, we also need to refocus our existing strategies to capture these opportunities. In other words, the devil is in the detail. The third pillar of the Refined Investor series is refocus. It will be useful as we refocus to rework our appetite and one's risk appetite and risk profile in real estate investing. Should decisions, for example, be taken on the basis of cautious optimism, or is this a time for bargain hunting and going for broke? What is the shape of your current property portfolio? What are your revised overall short, medium, and long-term investment goals since COVID-19 came upon us? What is your property investment strategy within the broader investment goals? It would be advisable to do a cash flow projection and establish when your liquidity peaks and troughs will be. We're dealing with a pandemic which we are fully yet to understand, making it difficult to forecast. So let's be realistic and consider dark light, base case, and bright light scenarios. How much cash or near cash do you have as you consider the immediate opportunities? Please do not forget that knowledge is power, but cash is king, more so in a depressed market. Well, let's also remember what our beloved Warren Buffett is quoted as saying. When people talk about cash being king, it's not king if it just sits there and does nothing. So if you possess non-earning assets such as bare unused land, could the land be utilized for real estate investment opportunity? Could this be done by way of partnership or be your own equity contribution in a project? Could you in fact even flip an asset now at break even and invest the proceeds in an opportunity in a critical in-demand sector in which captive markets exist? If you are fortunate to identify a great bargain and have insufficient funds to invest, would you consider a real estate investment club or even start one, pooling funds with like-minded individuals to invest in real estate projects? Given where inflation and interest rates are now, what should my investment target hurdle rate be? How do I refocus to ensure optimal returns? So of the myriad of possibilities arising from this crisis, which ones actually play to my strengths and help me best leverage on existing assets? As an investor, to enhance your yield, you could consider offering flexibility to a quality lessee with interest payment. Some banks still offer mortgages. A developer midway through a completion of a project, and with what's happened with COVID-19, could consider partnering with a bank to extend mortgages to prospective buyers to facilitate completion of the project. Standard Chartered, for example, offers mortgages to qualifying borrowers of amounts up to 200 million naira with loan to value of 80%, that equity contribution is 20%, at an interest rate of around 15% per annum for a tenure of 20 years or number of years left to 60 years of age. So it's very interesting and very attractive. There will be a need to refocus and determine the immediate actions to take to enhance current returns and strengthening bargaining power. Low-hanging fruit. A landlord of commercial or industrial property could, for example, offer to install specialized air filters to enhance the HSE of a building. This could put you in better stead to, at the minimum, retain existing rents at renewal or to attract good quality tenants. As a developer, existing project plans could be modified to include technology provisions for the remote working of the future, thereby making properties more sellable and lettable. Refocusing includes researching into new and more efficient building methods and building technologies for cleaner, greener structures to meet future demand. As a discerning investor, refocus on flexi construction designs in which studios and bedsitters could be easily converted into family dwelling units and vice versa. This would address the adaptive living requirements of the future. So ladies and gentlemen, in summary, refocusing requires stakeholders in the real estate sector to pivot their strategies towards the demands of a market that will be more refined and whose requirements will be more exacting. As you refocus, consulting with other market players in the sector to find out what opportunities exist or are in the horizon also foster overall thought leadership and market development. Before I conclude my remarks, I would like to touch on the issue of fear and risk aversion. As we rethink, reimagine, and refocus, fear, doubt, and apprehension become the biggest barriers to decision-making and execution. COVID-19 has brought with it a demoralizing air of despair, and decision makers require courage now more than ever in the face of uncertainty and adversity. Smart investing, though, is about taking calculated risks. Courage also is taking risk despite fear. So as a refined and discerning investor, the risks in the investment would already have been well defined, identified, priced, and mitigants to the risks put in place. So what could cause apprehension and prevention and prevent us from boldly proceeding in the direction of the opportunities before us? I guess the way this pandemic hit the world and its ravaging effects on mankind are enough to dampen even the most savvy and bullish investor. The fear that after COVID-19, there may be a COVID-20 or some other variant is almost upon us already. Naysayers are painting eternal doom and gloom scenarios. But whilst you procrastinate and let apprehension take the better of you, others are eyeing success and are moving to the other side of fear. So I encourage us, please, that the question should not be who is going to let me, but rather who is going to stop me. This is the time to be smart and audacious. Audacity augments courage, whereas hesitation augments fear. So let's move out of our comfort zones and follow the cheese. So I'm really excited about the opportunities that lie ahead. COVID-19 has created a playground really for who dares wins. In conclusion, in sharing my thoughts with you today, I have merely attempted to provoke and to provide some food for thought and a few perspectives that I believe warrant serious considerations. My eyes, through my metaphorical kaleidoscope, glimpse the silver lining in the real estate sector, as I firmly believe that even the worst events have some positive impact. Property remains an asset of value, a safe haven, even at the worst of times. However, it's important that we brace ourselves and face the recovery with wisdom, with creativity, and truly with cautious optimism. Life has happened, and life is like a kaleidoscope of situations. A slight change and all patterns alter. The present time calls for adaptability and innovation and partnerships. So ladies and gentlemen, let's take hold of the real estate opportunities that COVID-19 has thrown up. Let's not waste this crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, carpe diem, please, let's seize the moment. Thank you very much.
And this is a great time for the e-claps. Thank you so much, Mrs. Adeshola. I mean, I'm not sure we could have asked for a more appropriate, a more relevant, and a more effective presentation to really kick this off. We were very deliberate in our choice of speakers. We were looking for people who are obviously intelligent investors and who would be using data, who are also using essentially intelligent facts and figures to determine their perspective. And obviously, Mrs. Adeshola, being a seasoned banker, Standard Chartered Bank, as most of us know, is a conservative bank. And so, and in her personal capacity, her opinions also are obviously shaped and have been formed by her own personal decisions over the years as both an investor, as a professional, and as a business leader. And so the perspective that she's given us with a lot of real estate examples, as Fine in Country, there's nothing that we can take away from what she's presented. It's absolutely in line with our beliefs, our opinion, and indeed what we've been sharing for the last 5 years at the very least. I'm just going to pull out a couple of very key points that she mentioned and pull it all together in saying that at Fine in Country, we believe that the future is human. I say that again, that the future is human. Interestingly, March 7th to 10th, all top real estate stakeholders were going to converge in Cannes in France for the MIPIM Summit, which gathers about 7,000 to 10,000 real estate stakeholders from all over the world. And the theme of the MIPIM Summit this year, which was meant to hold on the 7th of March, was the future is human. And it was really a play on words because the future has always been human, the past has been human, and the present will and continue to be human. And why do I say that? When we're talking real estate, the key fundamentals have to do with humanity, have to do with human beings. It is human beings who are born in hospitals. It is human beings who stay in hotels, which is hospitality. It is human beings who work in industrial parks. It is human beings who work and play in these days in offices, whether grade A, B, or C. It is human beings who live in residential towers. It is human beings who live in lifestyle estates. So the future, the present, and the past is human. But it's become even more important for us to recognize the importance of humanity in real estate. And this is more so important at a time where social and psychological needs are coming to play. As a matter of fact, at MIPIM UK, a big segment of that summit had to do with well-being, where stakeholders are being asked to begin to think about well-being, the way that humans operate, interact, whether it's at home, in the offices, or wherever it is that humans connect with each other. And with COVID-19, with this global pandemic, we've seen that most of the companies who have led the way, they're talking about things like kindness, we're talking about care workers, we're talking about social workers. Everyone's attention has been drawn to the fact that irrespective of where we are all connected as human beings. We all have the same blood flowing through our veins. We all want the same things. We all want safety. We all want to be alive. We all want to be healthy. And we all, especially those in Africa and developing countries, require working healthcare systems. Indeed, we require infrastructure and all of those things that make humanity actually thrive. Why do I say that? She referred to co-working spaces, reimagining home designs. All of that has humans at the center. What is it that human beings want out of their spaces, be it in the hospitals, in the hotels, in our workspaces, in our homes? In light of COVID, a lot of things are changing and will have to change. But if we look back in history, we will find that all these things that we're talking about, actually, they are fundamental. Why are they fundamental? They're fundamental because humans haven't changed. Humans have always wanted to be taken care of at the very heart of the decisions that are made. Moving along in terms of the building methods and the flexible designs and all of this, we would like to see a future where real estate developers begin to, as it were, put the humans who are going to use those developments at the heart of their decisions. And as we begin to look at the different stakeholders and demographics with regards to the users, whether it's the millennials or the elderly residents, because the needs of a millennial is different from a family, an established family that is essentially an empty nester, as it were. The needs of a millennial is also different from the elderly, who may need a different sort of environment where they're not walking up staircases and all of that. So those are some of the things that we have to begin to reimagine. We obviously have to reimagine, as she referred, in terms of our building methods, because that goes right to the heart of the cost. Because at the end of the day, with real estate comes the question of affordability. And in Nigeria, clearly, that is a significant issue that, in light of not just the global pandemic, but also in light of the economy, which we're going to be bringing up very quickly to talk more about the economy. We will see that we're going into an economy, as it were, where we need to become more innovative. And as they say, as she said, invention, or rather necessity is the mother of invention. And so as we have less income in our hands, developers and stakeholders will need to begin to rethink the methods that they use to design and to develop and deliver these properties, so that we're thinking in terms of affordability, we're thinking in terms of accessibility at really all segments of the real estate market. Thank you once again, Mrs. Deshola, for that excellent presentation. We'll be coming back to you. Please keep the questions, the comments coming, because we will have time for those questions and comments. Right away, we're moving along to Dr. Andrew Nevin, who is the Chief Economist at Price Waterhouse, PwC. Dr. Andrew Nevin, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you to Fine and Country, to Udo, and to Shola, Professor Fabian. Sorry, I'm looking a little bit at my notes here. I didn't bring slides because the slides are out of date every day, but let me just spend 10 minutes talking a little bit from an economic perspective about where we're at the moment and where we're headed. And I am going to give a lot of bad news, but I think, as Shola said, I'm going to end with some, which I think very hopeful sort of for the future. So bear with me to some of the bad news. And let me start out by saying that as we went into this crisis, I think the economics profession did a very poor job early on understanding the gravity of the economic impact. So we had reputable organizations like the World Bank, IMF, private economists saying as late as February that the impact of COVID-19 might be to knock a few points off global growth. So instead of growing 4%, globally we grow 2%. I think now we understand very, very well that not only is this the gravest health crisis that we've ever faced, but it's also the gravest economic crisis that we've faced. And the reason for it is really simple. Through this crisis, we've all become epidemiologists and we've all become economists. And what we've come to understand is that one person's spending is another person's income. The economy is truly circular and we all depend on each other. So when you have billions of people go into lockdown, their consumption collapses for most goods and services, and you have many, many sectors that revenue essentially goes to zero. So if you think of every airline in the world, including the domestic airlines in Nigeria, are insolvent. You think of hotels in Italy that have zero occupancy and are rapidly going to bankruptcy, hotels in Greece, hotels in Spain. And that just cascades on. And of course, and I'll come back to Nigeria, we've seen the same thing in Nigeria. But just to give some very bad numbers to understand the gravity of what's happening. And sorry if I'm looking at my notes while I'm speaking because we're not using slides. You've had the Eurozone come out and say the economy will shrink by 7.5% this year. You had this morning the UK come out and said their base case is the economy shrinks by 14% this year. Australia, which has never had a recession in our lifetime, has come out and said it'll shrink 10% in the first half of the year, and that's a little bit out of date. Of course, in Africa, we're not immune to it. The latest World Bank numbers that will shrink by 1.6% GDP wise. And again, I think that number is out of date and the situation is going to be worse. In Nigeria, I mean, I think everyone, all of us understand, as I won't say I'm a Nigerian because it's very difficult to get citizenship, but as a long-term resident, everyone understands the impact of this kind of economic devastation because it has a greater effect because we don't necessarily have the fiscal impetus for it. So if we look at some other countries, the level of fiscal stimulus by the developed countries is unprecedented. In the UK, it's 200 billion pounds, which is over 10% of GDP. In the US, they're predicting $4 trillion, which is 20% of GDP. In Germany, they've got a loan package, which is 25% of GDP. So people have recognized that when millions and millions of people have their income go to zero, 30 million people unemployed in 5 weeks in the United States, a new number coming out in about 45 minutes, it's necessary to support them on that. But in our environment, of course, we all know that in Nigeria, as a result of the lockdown and economic slowdown, we've had tens of millions of people go day laborers, people who depend on their daily wage to eat, have suddenly lost their employment. And all of us, this is not abstract, all of us are connected to that ecosystem. on that. So one of the things that PwC has said from the beginning, 6-7 weeks ago, in fact, is that the number one thing for the country in the short term is to focus on making sure that the bottom of the pyramid can eat. And that means both getting them resources and also keeping the food supply chain moving are the two most urgent things. And I think the country has done a good job of that. And it's not just the government. I mean, I believe the federal government and the state governments have done what they can, but like almost everything in Nigeria, success comes through the private sector, the churches and mosques, individuals, the NGOs, all doing what they can. And I'm absolutely certain that everyone on this webinar is part of all that. And that's the short term. But as Bola said, we need to look a little bit further on that. And let me just take a step back and look economically. The last 4 years have been very, very difficult in the country. We had the recession, outright recession in 2016. And of course, we have population growth of almost 3%. So when the economy shrunk at 1.6, it meant per capita incomes declined by almost 5%. Almost all of us here, I'm sure, went through that pain. We had a very anemic recovery, 2%, 1%, 2%. Even for 2019, it was 2.3%. So we've never reached. We've continued to decline in per capita income all those years. But I mean, this is just a different world in many, many ways. And I think that in all the noise of the COVID, what has perhaps been missed is that the restructuring of the Nigerian economy that so many of us have asked for is actually happening. And it's happening not because, it's not happening voluntarily. I think that the way I express it is, it's a forced restructuring. But what has been announced in the last 4 or 5 weeks by the government is extraordinary. So the fuel subsidy, over which we had many, many debates over the years, is gone. The exchange rate, which many advocates have said we can't move forward unless we have a unified exchange rate, we've taken another step forward. There's been a devaluation and narrowing between the window rate and the official rate. Electricity, I think, lost in the noise as it's clearly come out that we're moving to a market-based tariff. So a system where most payers pay market-based tariffs. Industrial players probably pay a bit more. There is a provision for the bottom of the pyramid, but we all know that that's essential on that. And in fact, with the electricity market, there's a critical committee that is chaired by His Excellency Governor Al-Rufai. They started before this as in response to the power emergency. I think they're going to come up with very powerful changes to it that move us forward. You might have missed 3 days ago, the president agreed to, assented to the, or I hope I pronounced this right, the RSA report, which was the 2000 report that looked at a restructuring of the ministries, departments, and agencies to simplify and to reduce the cost of governance. This has sat on the desk for years and years and years, and suddenly it's been ratified. We've also seen, of course, and again, out of crisis, I don't want to say comes opportunity, but comes change, forced restructuring at the state level. So I've seen at least 2 states, I believe Rivers and Ekiti have announced major restructuring programs. But the reality is, with the oil price where it is, I mean, the federal government is projecting a drop in the total federation account by about 60%. So we're in a regime of forced restructuring for many of the changes to unlock the growth. Now, we've said for years that we need growth at 6 to 8% per year in order to alleviate poverty and to reduce unemployment. We've also said that real estate is the single most important sector. We have a housing deficit. I'm not going to use the World Bank number because the World Bank has already told me the number is not correct. And the minister knows it's not correct. I mean, we don't have that many homeless people, but we don't have enough housing and we have too much substandard housing. So what is going to ignite all this with these sort of structural changes that are happening before our eyes rapidly in Nigeria? The reason that we have grown below the population growth rate is people are not investing enough in Nigeria. To put some numbers around this, we need to grow 6 to 8%. We roughly need about 45 trillion naira a year of gross capital formation in economist terms. We're getting about 55 or 60% of that. People are refusing to invest in Nigeria. Nigerians are refusing to invest, the diaspora is refusing to invest, and outsiders are refusing to invest. And we've said for years, as long as people refuse to invest, we'll have growth rates. It's a mathematical certainty that we'll have growth rates below the population growth rate. Trader money doesn't matter, intervention programs doesn't matter. The numbers are so small coming out of those that unless the private sector, individuals choose to invest in Nigeria, we're not going to move forward. So the opportunity for us is, I do think we're going to have an ignition of the Nigerian economy as people recognize the forced structural change. Now, when I say forced, I genuinely hope that the nature of these restructuring changes, one, are orderly, not disorderly. Two, are kept under the control of Nigeria, and we don't end up in a situation where the IMF is called in. But an orderly restructuring, economic restructuring, controlled by Nigerians, which should lead us to a place where Nigeria will be the most attractive economic destination on the planet. We all know the incredible potential. I don't need to go over that. Every state, every region, every commodity, the human capital we have, etc. So what does this all mean for real estate? As I said, we have consistently viewed real estate as the most important sector. We've advocated for years to unlock, Bola mentioned the concept of dead capital when Warren Buffett says it's not an asset if it's sitting there fallow. We have too much dead capital on that. But I see the bright light out of this of unlocking that dead capital, unlocking all the value in the real estate. And now is the time for people to be lining up to prepare how they're going to participate on it. The fundamentals have not changed. Lagos still projected to be the world's largest city in the planet. Value of real estate depends on people's income and the scarcity of a resource. You have a place that's constrained by water. So places that constrained by water, Singapore, Hong Kong, New York, as they get wealthier, the real estate values go up on that. And I was also very heartened to say one other thing that we've been advocates of is we'd like to see, Bola said, that we'd like to see building methods that are appropriate to the conditions in Nigeria, or the different parts of Nigeria, the right materials, wood instead of concrete, for example, taking account of the fact that we are basically in Lagos, at least a water city. Many parts of the southern parts of the country, of course, are also tropical places. So we see this crisis an opportunity for this restructuring and to unlock Nigeria's incredible potential. Despite the unprecedented economic devastation we've seen around the world and in Nigeria. I also just wanted to add, I'm in the camp, I won't say it's an official PwC position, maybe it will come soon, but as Bola touched on, we are going to see changes coming out in the way we live that we can't even predict now. I mean, we've all learned we can work from home in many ways. That's going to change. I think we've all learned we don't necessarily need to get on a plane for a one-day meeting. The last international trip I took was one day to go to Accra for client meetings. I don't think we'll do that in the future. I think that so people are going to drive less, people are going to fly less. And of course, that's going to have a knock-on effect in the long term on oil price, on hotel occupancy, on the recovery of the airlines. But it's also going to have an incredible beneficial effect. This morning, if you read the international news, you might have seen that already the mayors of many major cities signed a manifesto talking about bringing climate change to the center of this. Cities representing almost 1 billion people. I genuinely believe that coming out of this crisis, we're going to have a new bondedness among humanity. We're going to have a new approach to the climate change issue. We're going to have a new approach to the way biodiversity, and we're going to come out stronger. And for Nigeria, it's really a chance to structure the economy in a way that we achieve our economic potential. And if we even do 20% of that, 30% of that potential in the next few years, real estate is going to be the big beneficiary. So as I said, I didn't want to end on just bad news about this. I'm committed to Nigeria personally. I'm not going anywhere. And looking forward to it. So I have some slides I'm happy to share later As I said, they have too much bad news that's always out of date. So I thought I would bring the good news message. Thank you so much, and God bless Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andrew Nevin, and indeed, God bless Nigeria. Thank you for that presentation. You know, you did an excellent presentation also in February at the Refine Investor Series that was hosted in Lagos. Now we have people logging in from all over, you know, all over the world, really. And you've always provided, you know, very strong data, but in addition, a very positive perspective from the point of view of pointing us towards the opportunities. And I want to refer in particular to something that you mentioned just a few minutes ago, but you've always indeed mentioned that Nigeria has very strong economic potential, and that Lagos in particular as a mega city is projected to be the world's largest city. And obviously, in addition to the fact that, you know, one of the key fundamentals of real estate has to do with scarcity and then demand versus supply. So if we think about the land that is available in Lagos, even though we're not just focused on Lagos for this particular series, but we are in Lagos, at least I am in Lagos, and our offices, our head office for Finding Country West Africa is in Lagos. So using that, you know, you've always provided, you know, essentially that direction to say that Lagos presents an incredible opportunity, but indeed, we also have out-of-state locations, whether it's Ogun State, it's Oyo State. And when we come back, you know, to the questions and answers, and when we try and expand this conversation, I would be interested in hearing your views about, you know, out of city, and I'm referring now to Lagos as a mega city location, in terms of investment and in terms of acting as an alternative residential location for people who may be working in the environment. At this point, I would like to also draw attention to the fact that you did indicate that real estate is one of the most, is actually, according to your words, the most important sector for the economy, and that, you know, restructuring is required and that we need structural adjustments, and some of those are coming on stream. We'll come back to that and ask very specific questions with regards to the economy, what some of those structural adjustments you know, are, and how effective that, you know, they will be. In the meantime, I would like to go along to Dr. Fabian Ajogu, who will take the legal aspects. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about COVID-19 being perhaps a force majeure, then contracts, you know, real estate, I like to say, is 50% contract and 50%, you know, bricks and mortar, as it were. So there's a lot of documentation, there are lots of agreements, and obviously in a situation like this, we have developers, we have buyers, we have stakeholders, the brokers in the middle, the vendors, the suppliers, and there's so many aspects to this. And so Professor Fabian Ajogu, SAN, I would like to invite you to share the legal considerations of real estate. And so over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Udo, and thanks to Finding Country for having me on this. I would just like to put out the slides that I would be talking through very briefly. So just a moment. So just before I get on with it, I would like to take from where Dr. Levin stopped, and to sort of modulate the issues of giving bad news and, on the other hand, over optimism. So we talk about the refined investor series, and what makes one refined is a number of things from an investor's perspective. One, to be well informed, to get superior advice and have access to comparative data with which to make decisions at times of crisis. I've been invited to talk about legal considerations that arise from the COVID-19 pandemic, but I'll also be speaking from one who could claim to be a player in the sense that I chair a board of a real estate company that essentially has malls where your ShopRite and Game are housed. And we put these malls in Lagos, Abuja, and a couple other places in Ghana as well. Now, what have we witnessed in all of this is a drop in what we call footfall to the mall for obvious reasons. the impact is not necessarily just the impact from COVID, but from the reactionary measures that have come from governments and across the states and regions. And what that has done is a shutdown of demand. When you shut down demand, what then goes there is that there is a drop in footfall in the malls, and we have witnessed down to about 30% in the first 2-3 weeks of the lockdown measures, and subsequently a gradual rise coming back. But that rise is for the big anchor tenants, for the game and the ShopRites of this world, but not so much for the other shops who are not considered as essential by the government, who sell jewelry, who sell clothing and other things. But don't forget they're tenants, and they're all part of what I would talk about, the square meter challenge. So I will start off with talking about commercial real estate demand decline. And we talk about the square meter challenge. So we look at the first one, and it's trade restrictions and shopping pullers. When you have a big mall, for instance, the Novari Lekki Mall, which is the biggest mall in Lagos, you would find that people don't just go to malls because they want to buy things. They sometimes go there to take the children out, to keep a promise for a family outing, and from there shopping occurs. Some go for movies and then shopping occurs. These are shopping pullers that have been switched off. And then trade restrictions on the kinds of wares to be sold. You would also look at entertainment restrictions across. Well, people can only go to restaurants and order takeaway. That instantly reduces the other fraction of why people go to those places. They go there for the communion of it, for the conversation of it, and all of that is put to a decline. So the next point is we talk about floor space de-optimization for humans and the rent impact. So when we talk about de-optimization of floor space, it then means you have to do the physical distancing. I would have thought we should communicate in local language what physical distance is. I'm not sure many understand the social distance, which is perhaps a concept not very familiar in this environment. So, but then when you make those gaps, you sort of de-optimize space. And everyone knows that in the business world, one of the analyses of efficiency is optimization of space. You could talk about income per square meter and the impact on rent. Much of that is going negative. We also look at floor space maximization for goods. Goods don't need a square meter spacing. They don't need any distancing. They can be stacked together. So you will find warehousing doing very well because people are putting things there. We then go to the offices as a segment, and we've got the Novari Central Park in Abuja, which has a mall segment and offices. Again, we have the square meter challenge affecting people depending on who they are, perspectives to stakeholders. Now, interestingly, there's an interpretation of different stakeholders to some of the reactionary measures to COVID-19. So take, for instance, from the entrepreneur's perspective, we're told there has to be 60% occupancy, no more than 60% of the workforce. What does this 60% occupancy mean for an entrepreneur? Some are thinking that it could mean downsizing. If I could function with 60%, perhaps we shouldn't have everyone. Downsizing, right-sizing, outsourcing, whatever name it is going to reduce human personnel. And that is the implication for some, maybe not all. Now, but look at it interestingly from the employee, was 60% occupancy as read out, for instance, by the very hardworking governor of Lagos State. What it means is rotation. So you draw a roster and rotate staff. So, however, you do not have more than 60% occupancy at a time. Whatever perspective you see, it does affect full optimization of real estate space. And let me just look at one more aspect before I then get into some of the legal perspectives to it, which is the residential real estate. Now, homes are now the new office, so to speak. The outsourcing of floor space to the home price bearer is something worthy of analysis. So work from home seems to be the concept for the time being and perhaps in future. But what does that mean for who bears the price? I just maybe throw something that steers settled waters. So can an employee now come back and tell the employer that I would need you to bear a fraction of my rent because I'm now using it for work purposes, and maybe a fraction of it, maybe 5%, maybe 10%, maybe anything. It possibly is a counterbalance to pay reductions on the occasion of transportation costs that no longer occurs, working from home. All these are things people can think and mull about and possibly talk along the lines that Mr. Adeshola said, users could then bargain with landlords and so on. Now, floor space restrictions, maybe not an issue at home. Purchasing, but then of course you would have condemned one room to silence where no one disturbs you because of background noise and you're possibly working from there. Purchasing power declines will affect mortgages and lease renewals for sure. I note that Dr. Levin sort of tapered down some of those, as he said, could not be good news looking, but then we have to keep the optimism, and I do agree with him. So our ability to buy will be reduced. Market corrections will force shifts in obligor requirements, and then we will have a higher probability of disputes. For some lawyers, this is an opportunity. For some managers, this is a foresight to prevent them. Foreclosures, recoveries, project cost overruns will occur because of shutdowns and timings, and cost differences will lead to cost overruns. Now, in good, well-structured project finance, there will be cost overrun guarantees and insurance on it. So again, opportunity for insurance and premium on it. Now, here is the thing about the legal perspective to this. We all talk about the new normal, the new ways, the new measures, but then we're talking about these things with unchanged laws. The laws are still the same, extant laws. And so if a dispute does occur, you will be interpreting it from the current law as it is. At best, you might have leeways for force majeure, act of God, frustration arguments that no party could have foreseen, but then the substantive law is still the same, at least for jurisdictions that have not been proactive enough to pass the COVID-19 Act, for instance, that is comprehensive in dealing with limitations and so many other things that affect real estate. So the caveat emptor, buyer beware, will not change as a principle, but then we now are migrating to virtual inspections. Are they the same? Risk management in the intervening periods between when you have done a deal and when you're able to perfect them, for instance, to get governor's consent or registration. You'll all agree there's been like a 5-week exposure period where no one will be receiving documents at the land registry at this point. But then the law still remains that unperfected agreements are inchoate and not necessarily null and void. So people do need to be mindful about this. So it's possible to take steps to perfect this transactions as soon as possible, as soon as there's a reopening of the lockdown or eased lockdown or fractional lockdown. So to review commencement dates, transactional periods, extension, moratorium, these are things that could form bargaining points as between the parties. We have to admit that there is a higher likelihood of inability to service loans. As Dr. Levin rightly observed, sitting down at home is switching off demand. And when you don't demand, you don't spend. When you don't spend, people don't make income. So there will be inability to service loans, make payments, mortgages, rent, service charges, etc. Now the problem, or maybe the good side from the Nigerian perspective, is that rent isn't paid monthly. And so pretty much most people have paid per annum, and it will run save upon the past 7 weeks that were shut down by reason of the pandemic. But there are a couple of options for the proactive person. for the informed person to restructure ahead of default, renegotiate payment terms for loans, mortgages, rent, especially for notice period payments. And these are possible by being proactive. Humans are more open to renegotiate terms before they're due, as against when it's due and people lock down into their rights and privileges. Now, we could also look at exploring relevant government intervention and, from the CBN, from the Inland Revenue Service in terms of tax and deferred payments. And then again, to cut and reduce running costs. Now, whenever people talk about cost reduction, the first thing that goes to mind is humans, which is payroll and personnel. But we've seen that for successful companies, that isn't necessarily the case. There are other costs that people can take down, travel, mode of travel, entertainment, or OPEX, other OPEX other than staff. So, and again, another possibility, inject fresh capital. It's an opportunity to invest for some, to dilute ownership and bring in other people. This is a good time to engage professionals because their pricing will be a little bit more affordable now, as they're and eager to earn income at this point in time, to offer advice on all of these areas that I have mentioned, from accountants to lawyers to IT professionals to project management personnel. This is a good time to get the good advice, affordable advice, to be able to reorganize this financial obligations. Now, again, there will be variations made, and where made should be in writing. And of course, the age-long issues of force majeure typically is something that comes up at times like this, and for which parties do need to keep in mind. In all, I take a perspective to the COVID-19 pandemic, and I mean, 19 puts humor to some people instead of 19. But I mean, when I look at the 19, it takes me to the book of Ecclesiastes 1:9. And it says, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. And there's nothing new under the sun. So there's been pandemics in the past, and people have reacted by modifying the way they do things, by adjusting to the new reality, by thinking out of the box, by looking at areas to prune down the previous patterns, but then it's nothing new. And what this does for me, I would just like to end sort of by sharing the words from Judy Brown's poem, The Trough. And the trough talks about moments such as this. And it says, there is a trough and waves, a low spot where horizon disappears and only sky and water are our company. And there we lose our way, unless, and this is what I'd like to emphasize, unless we rest, knowing the wave will bring us to its crest again. Now, in this intervening period is when the informed investor buys instead of stockpiling consumables. He buys, he invests, he makes good deals from discounts by reason of reduced demands. And there's no better time to do this than have idle cash lying and suffering inflation. By the way, I was dreading whether Dr. Levin would talk about the misery index. And the misery index is something that has been on the rise for most countries. The misery index comes from the unemployment rate plus the inflation rate, both of which have gone up currently. But when we remember the words of Judy Brown in The Trough, it's a time to take a deep breath, breathe, listen to what's going on, and plan for the future. And on this note, I'd like to thank you for listening, and thank you, Fine and Country, for putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Fabian Ajogu. Thank you for that excellent presentation. Lots of food for thought, both from a philosophical point of view, as is usually to be expected from you, and also the legal considerations. I really like the note on which you ended. History really does repeat itself. And, you know, when I think back that as a company, 2008, 2007, 2008, which was the height of the recession, that we launched this business in West Africa, in Nigeria to be specific, were the height of what was then a global recession. And, you know, since then, we've been through 2 key recessions. And, you know, of course, we've gone through the Ebola. And as you said, you know, we've had the Spanish flu. There have been pandemics in the past, and there are lessons to be learned. And, you know, at the heart of all of this is humanity, the human behavior. Humans adapt. Humans are flexible. We're meant for, you know, to change, to grow, and to do the right things, you know, that benefit us at the end of the day. You talked about the misery index. I'm referring to some of those, you know, psychological and social issues, because at the end of the day, when we're in the midst of a crisis, it's really how, as human beings, because that's what we are first, before we're professionals, before we're doctors, before we're economists, before we're lawyers, we're humans. And it's the way we respond to crisis, it's the way we respond, you know, whether we respond in panic or we respond with confidence, because, as you said, we have access to good information, good quality, well-informed, you know, content that enables us, as it were, put our best foot forward in making the right decisions. Having listened to you, if you're an investor, if you're a developer, if you're a buyer, if you're a retailer, and you know that you can negotiate with your stakeholders, it gives you that much more confidence, knowing that they're also humans who will be using some of these principles, because at the end of the day, everyone wants to stay in business, and everyone wants to, as it were, use the right information and make the right decisions, not just for themselves, but really for humanity and for the economy, because we're all stakeholders in this economy. Lots of excellent points there that you've brought up. The issue of optimization and now de-optimization, in a sense, because, you know, if you think about the tall buildings that are going up, whether residential, commercial, in Eco-Atlantic, even in the marina area where there's regeneration that was beginning to happen, it's all about optimizing the space. And that's why we're seeing tall buildings, 20, 30-story buildings, 15-story building offices, and, you know, much taller residential. It's all in the quest to, as it were, optimize the very limited space that we have in most of our cities. But coming back to the issue of the psychology of the investor, at the end of the day, real estate is a long-term investment, and those who take a long-term perspective always do well. Mr. Adeshola spoke very strongly about, you know, some of the quotes and the perspective of Warren Buffett, who speaks to the issue of vision, that at the end of the day, when everybody's panicking, the real astute investor puts on their thinking cap, because they do not go in the direction you know, of the general populace, as it were, that there's a reason why if you remove the M from masses, what you have left is asses. You know, not a particularly polite thing to say, but those who follow the crowd tend to make the wrong decision. And that's why we put together the Refined Investor series, you know, so that astute investors can get intelligent information to make the right decision. Thank you very much once again, Professor Fabian Ajogu. We're going to come back to you with some specific questions. I'm going to go right into it in terms of asking a couple of questions based on some questions that the team have put together that we've received from our guests, and I'll be looking through to see some additional comments. Mrs. Adeshola, I have a question. And for you, people are asking in terms of investors, how accessible are these mortgage loans? I know that you've mentioned, they said you mentioned something, you know, to do with some mortgages that are available, and so they would like some more information. I know you referred them to Standard Chartered, but perhaps if you're able to share the broad framework of that. But in addition, do you see the market recovering, and, you know, using those, your lenses that you used earlier to give us, you know, your perspective, what would you say is this time frame? Very tough question. And I'm going to ask the same question of Dr. Nevin. in terms of market recovery? What is it going to look like, and what sort of time frame would you put on that? Mrs. Adeshola, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I lost you for a minute, but I had read the question earlier.
Okay.
And I believe it's the first question about 15% on 20-year loan for development of real estate. Yeah? Okay.
Right.
Well, one, the mortgages offered are consumer loans, so want to acquire property. So they're not development loans for construction loans for developers. That's the first thing. Also, fundamentally, a mortgage is also a loan. It just happens to be linked to and is securitized by real estate. So I think it's important that that is clarified. As I said earlier, Standard Chartered is one of the few banks that are offering loans, and indeed the terms and features are very attractive. Even abroad, to get a loan to value of 80% requires quite stringent requirements, from the borrower. I think there was a mention of in developed countries rates are 4 to 7%. Why are mortgage loans at 15%? Well, first of all, in the market, generally lending rates are even in the 20s. But because of the bank's focus on trying to stimulate consumer lending, it is at 15%, and these are loans that are as long as 20 years. Nigeria is also not a developed country, and I'm sure Andrew can talk to the interest rate differentials between a country like Nigeria and the developed countries that you're referring to, where lending is at 4 to 7%. So I think that probably covers that. I think I had addressed some of it online on the chat. If that's the question. I think there was a second question. The second part of it was about pension fund accounts locked, and why can't he borrow against his pension funds? Well, one, I'm not even sure regulations allow it, because your pension savings are supposed to be used for a rainy day and not spent upfront. But there are other ways of acquiring property, and like I said, there are various government schemes, but there are also private sector bank offerings, such as the mortgage that we offer. I hope I've been able to address those two questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Mrs. Adeshola. There was a question about when do you think there will be a market recovery? I'm not sure we've actually even started down the line, but we're already talking about a recovery. So what are your views on that?
Yes. Well, I'm not even sure that we're already yet sort of at the bottom of the pile for us to begin to see a recovery. Again, I mean, this is crystal ball gazing, because nobody knows. I think the advent of this terrible scourge means that, even investors are living by the day. And the opportunities that I enumerated in my presentation were really opportunistic, those that, one happens to either stumble across, or those that we seek out. But as to when the market will recover, your guess is as good as mine. The key thing is to have one's ears out, to keep one's eye not on where the ball is, but where the ball is going, because I think that's what matters. If you keep your eye not on the ball, but where it's likely to land, then you probably position yourself better to be able to optimize the advantages that exist. But to be honest with you, I couldn't say. How long is COVID going to be around for? I think that's more the pertinent question. And if we can answer that, then we can begin to extrapolate to determine when the recovery is likely to happen.
Thank you very much. Dr. Andrew, there's a question that Mrs. Adeshola just asked, which is, how long is COVID going to be with us? Some scientists, I've been participating in some international real estate webinars, and there is a sense in which, most organizations are taking the view, as with, various other organizations in other sectors, that we can assume this is going to go on for at least anywhere from, a year to maybe even 2 years. And so with that, based on the fact that they expect that a vaccine won't happen until maybe 18 months to 24 months, maybe earlier, but most people are taking the long range view of about 18 months to 24 months. Do you have any views on that? And how do you tie that, the global pandemic and the finding of a vaccination, to the impact on the Nigerian economy. And then I would like you to also answer a second question right after that.
Well, I think that it's hard to speculate on the timing, as Shola was saying, and I don't want to speculate on it. What I want to say, though, is real estate's a long-term investment. I mean, at some point in the next 6 months, next 2 years, people are going to start to invest in the world, right? And Nigeria needs to be ready. Now, what are they going to invest in? I mean, one thing I think that's critical to understand is Europe's population is shrinking and aging. If we lose a year, in effect, out of this, it's even older. So you're not going to have a strong rebound. I mean, you have a rebound, obviously, but you're not going to have growth in traditional sectors in Europe, right? And investors around the world, pension funds, institutional investors need to find a place to put their money. So what's the number one destination? We all know it should be Nigeria. The issue for Nigeria is to be ready that when people are ready to invest, and obviously they're going to be cautious, balance sheets will have been, I don't want to say destroyed, but will have been beaten up. People are going to be cautious, but they will have to invest sometime between 6 months from now and 24 months from now. And Nigeria needs to make sure that we are an attractive place to invest. As I said a little earlier, we have not been getting enough investment. So that we challenge the federal government. Right. That's the fundamental issue on that. I think there will be a lot of investment globally too, though, around the climate issue, about the green economy, about some of those. I think that momentum is building. Young people want to see it done. They're a bigger and bigger part of the population. I think this pandemic has made people more likely to go in that direction. So we also need to embrace. I'm part of the Financial Center for Sustainability Lagos, which was started by Coco, the CEO over at FMDQ, to make sure that we are getting investment and we are utilizing investment in a way that is sustainable, the circular economy, dealing with the waste issues, pollution issues, et cetera. So that's a key area of investment. But we need to get investment coming in, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. We need to be first at the table to get investment from all investors, Nigerians, diaspora, and outsiders.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Andrew. It looks like Fabian may have Dr. Ajogu. Let's see, are you still there with us? Are you?
Yes, I am.
Oh, great. Okay, because I know you have to leave at 1:30. So I'm going to ask you this question, Professor Ajogu. You mentioned that though we speak of the new normal, our legal infrastructure has remained largely the same. How can we drive legal reforms in the real estate sector in light of COVID-19? That's a broad question, but let me bring it very specifically to some of the key challenges with regards to investing in real estate. We have infrastructural issues such as how to actually register. I know that Lagos State and I believe maybe Kaduna State have an e-registry, but you still need to go there physically, and engage, and in these days of social distancing, which we expect to last for a while, and even if it eases over the years, from a point of view of digitalization and efficiency, there's a sense in which, the way that titles are registered and the security of those titles, have a large impact on real estate if it's to act as a real catalyst for wealth creation. So perhaps if you will speak to that issue as far as, the infrastructure, but then also if there are any other legal reforms that you would like to talk about.
Well, thank you very much. It was Thomas Friedman who talked about part of the reasons why nations remain poor in the sense of what they don't invest in over the time. So you will see a good example of which I said in the geographic information system, the AGs. Enugu State, so this is the thing that people from spending the wrong to hold on to. So post federation, real estate registration and perfect is still largely physical. It's analog. The land register is fine. Stamps 30 technology. AGs and AGs for Enugu and AGs for Abuja. You would find that I'm not sure now. Can you hear me?
Now we can. You went up for just a second, and you were quite low initially.
My apologies. I was saying that land transaction in most states is still analog, and you will have to do physical registration. But with the ages, you can then talk about doing online, electronic, and which is more in sync with the new. So states that have not extended this thing that they're not attractive for big projects because people spend approximately 40% of the cost of a building, secure title, which would not have been the issue, fencing and the thing. And so I think that the be in lies raise, they will reduce disputes, title, condition, and of course, the with which people can verify title. All things reduce the cost of borrowing. Remember, each time a bank gives you a mortgage, they go and pay all that expensive thing, the governor's contract, and all of that for the borrower added back to the cost of borrowing. There's a question just for me to talk. I saw the chat, and it talks about buying real estate in parts of the country other than just Lagos and Abuja. Steve, former UHCN property said, if land in Kaura Namoda, take it, buy it. Real estate is the only thing automatically hedges against inflation and narration. And we're a lot of it now linked to the oil price decline. So good value, it is earning money for you in terms of rental car or not. Holding on and automatically adjust inflation. I don't know how that's the way it works. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Ajogu. I'm going to bring this question back to Dr. Andrew and also Mrs. Adeshola, if you want to jump in on this one also. With regards to emerging out of city locations, which will put a new twist on location, location, location. So Lagos obviously is the epicenter, is a mega city, and there's a sense in which, Professor Fabian was just, saying that real estate, obviously wherever you invest, Nigeria has a population, and yes, we talk about that population, we talk about the housing deficit, but we also talk about what is referred to as an effective demand. So people who are actually able to make those investments, that will be those will be the people referred to as representing the effective demand. And so in a country like Nigeria, with our GDP, there's a question of affordability. And so that then leads to alternative locations. What is your perspective, Mrs. Adeshola and Dr. Andrew? If you would speak on the concept of these emerging out of Lagos location also, as it's where representing the affordability and the accessibility with regards to being the alternative, destinations or location for investors.
Thank you very much. I think, one of the things that's clear, and all of us have said this, is that, the sort of world of work and world of business has changed forever. Right. Where typical investors scorned anywhere outside, Lagos and Abuja in particular, and maybe one or two other cities, these days people would actually be looking at those cities. I mean, the factors that influence, developers moving around include demand, future value, yield, infrastructure, security, and so on and so forth. But I think with the potential for remote working, for the increase in manufacturing and development, there's no reason why suitable locations that have infrastructure will not be, and that have a captive market, will not be attractive investments in future car park space, that there's a rental a flow that will come from cars actually being parked there and the collections that they get. So there will be some interesting opportunities that will come up outside Lagos, outside Abuja, that I think we should keep our eyes on, particularly areas that emerge as industrial zones. If there's a plug and play industrial park somewhere, housing will be required, families will be there, schools will develop, shops and malls and so on and so forth. So usually once you have an anchor, an ecosystem sort of develops around the anchor. So I see some interesting, opportunities there for investors.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that contribution. Dr. Andrew, I know I'd asked you to speak to this, but perhaps if I can take you very quickly to the diaspora market that, you speak of, we at Fine & Country believe very strongly that that's a captive market, in addition to the millennial, which if we have time, we can talk about. But let's talk about the diaspora nation, because they obviously represent an economy of their own. And, you've spoken, Mr. Adeshola has spoken about, the sort of capital that is needed to invest. You've said that, foreigners are not investing. We have enough private capital within Nigeria. But speak to the, the investment into Nigeria from the diaspora economy for a minute or two, if you will.
Well, I mean, I was tired of hearing year after year that we were an oil economy, or oil was the biggest source of FX. So we wrote the paper last year that said, in fact, the biggest source of FX is the diaspora, quite a lot larger than oil. The only thing, it's not so visible because it goes to millions of Nigerians, not to the federal government or the federal account. So they're and in fact, we've also said the only thing holding up the economy is the diaspora on that. So, what does the diaspora want? Obviously, the diaspora supports friends and families in some cases with basic needs, education, healthcare, feeding. But we also know they want to invest. All the surveys show that. The problem is that there aren't organized ways to invest, and they often want to invest in their state of origin. So one thing we've been encouraging is, state governors need to think about how to engage the diaspora, bring them in. But of course, what's the class? What do they want to invest in? The number one class they want to invest in is hard assets like, real estate, essentially, on that. So I think that groups that can organize both the supply and the demand of this, so they can supply a product that's trusted, it's clear, that's a solid investment, and then market it properly to this group will do very, very well. In terms of the question that Bola just answered around the whole country, I mean, we've been clear for years and years that we need development all across Nigeria, right? I mean, it is not sustainable to have 30 or 40% of the GDP in Lagos. And the biggest problem Lagos has is, and it doesn't matter what it does in terms of education or healthcare, social services, if it attracts more and more migrants, it'll overwhelm the infrastructure. So we need Benin City, we need Calabar, we need Niger State, Plateau State, Sokoto, everywhere there's development. And Nigeria should be a country like Germany or United States or India, where there are multiple poles of economic prosperity. Of course, the good news is there are governors, I think, that are doing a great job. So Governor Al-Rufai in Kaduna, Governor Obaseki, I mean, there's political challenges, but he's trying. Governor Makinda in Oyo State, for example. And I think investors who know that particular state situation, know where the governor is taking it in the direction of travel, I think they could do extraordinarily well. I mean, there are countless people who've made money in the United States investing in Chicago, Seattle, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Orlando, not just New York and Los Angeles. And I think the same principle applies to a country as large and diverse as Nigeria.
Great, thank you very much. I mean, the diaspora economy is obviously something that needs to be unlocked because it's massive and it's largely untapped, as you've said. It definitely requires creativity and, what we think is astute engagement, not your typical, which is why the theme of this Rethink, Reimagine, Refocus, is something that that all stakeholders have to take very seriously. Certainly from the banking side of things, when we did the Taking Nigeria to the World to engage the diaspora, one of the key gaps was in the area of financing, because obviously most of them are used to using mortgages and bank financing to fund their real estate. And so that remains a really strong and untapped market, and something that may require some structural adjustments. As we begin to wrap this up, I just want to run through a couple of themes that have emerged in the conversation. And in addition, I will also bring in some of our perspective. The first thing I'd like to say is that, just listening to all our contributors, our panelists, and thank you very much for really the excellent insight that you've provided to us so far. I'd like to say that if you're negative, there is enough to feed your negativity. And if you're positive, then there's certainly enough opportunities out there. And in a sense, that summarizes most of what has been said. As a company, we've been very big on inspiring confidence because we feel that confidence is a very critical currency, for investing. And indeed, we have lots of publications. The one that I would think would be very relevant, the Astute Investor's Guide, which we created some years ago during the height of the recession as a way to give confidence and direction to investors at the time, using quotes from Warren Buffett, Robert Kiyosaki, and loads of real estate investors and investors in other segments. And confidence really is at the heart of every investor's game. Long-term vision, which some of our panelists have referred to, is also very central. And our upcoming Refined magazine, the cover page is Real Estate Investment in an Era of VUCA. I like what Mrs. Adeshola called it, the black swan, and that's something that we're going to look into. And we've actually asked the question, is this an era of VUCA? Is there volatility? Is there uncertainty? Is there complexity? Is there ambiguity? To an extent, depends on who you're speaking to, but we like to say that in a sense, operating in Nigeria, investing in Nigeria, especially in real estate, in a sense, we are almost eternally in a VUCA situation, whether it's from, the how to register your title, to the infrastructural issues, to taxes and all of those things. But we're seeing, some light at the end of the tunnel, an ongoing thing. We also like to say that because Nigeria is a developing economy and a developing country, that very word developing itself represents essentially opportunities, because when something is developing, then there are opportunities to be had. And it's those gaps that in a sense we're speaking of, but we don't speak of them from a point of view of having no solutions. Instead, what we're doing, the conversation we've had so far with the panelists and that we continue to have on the Refined Investor series, is to get investors to have a think and to imagine and to, as it were, expand their thoughts, to the various options and opportunities and possibilities that exist in a developing economy such as Nigeria. In fact, where there are problems or obstacles, the flip side of obstacles are always opportunities. And we do believe that those opportunities exist. Interestingly, during this lockdown in the last 6 weeks or so in Nigeria, it's been incredible that on a weekly basis, we have received strong inquiries from different segments of potential investors. The one key segment would be the people we refer to as, what you may refer to as opportunistic investors, ranging from those looking from overseas to, as it were, invest in commercial, to the locals who are looking, as it were, to invest in residential properties, whether it's land, whether it's houses, or distressed or discounted properties. And as a matter of fact, currently we're putting together, that pool. But the question is, as Mr. Adeshola said, have we reached the bottom? We've not even really started. So real investors, understand the game, and it's when we have this sort of situation, that's when they really come out to play. And they come out to play with a rule book. They have, essentially rules, for engaging these opportunities, as it were. We also have the diaspora interest, where obviously if we look at the devaluation of the Naira, the question is how far is that going to go? And does that present a unique opportunity for the diaspora? A few years ago, when we had this similar situation where there was a significant devaluation, we actually worked with developers to advise them to, as it were, channel their properties and target it specifically to the diaspora in terms of the price point and, of course, in terms of quality and standard. And I feel that, the COVID has brought us to that place again where, coupled with the dwindling oil prices, yes, it's gone up to about 30 or thereabout. It looks like it's rebounding, but, there's no saying, where it's going to go in the next few weeks or in the next few months and all of that, because there are all these other factors that affect our economy. The point remains that in the last few years, as Dr. Nevin said, we've been in this, really declining state. And so there is an opportunity for astute investors who have the right information, the right knowledge, as Professor Fabian was saying. So for us, the top considerations are in an economy such as this, what we've done is to use the acronym VUCA to represent and give it an alternative interpretation, where V, instead of volatility, represents vision. And with vision, we're referring to long-term. If you're investing in real estate, it's a long-term investment. Professor Fabian said, you know, it's a hedge against inflation. Certainly is a hedge. But in addition, investors who take a long-term perspective, especially the local players who have capital, instead of having it in Naira or just convert it, if they begin to take a view that Nigeria, with its population, the fact that it's a developing economy, the fact that the population will continue to rise, and yet there's a scarcity really of the resource of land, even though, of course, we have the Eco-Atlantic and a few other places where they're creating land, as it were. But irrespective, if you look at the fundamentals, there will always be an opportunity. And if I recall, Dr. Andrew actually had mentioned I believe our last series, that, you know, the Nigerian, especially the Lagos property, is actually undervalued, especially when we compare it to similar mega cities across the world. And so that's something that, you know, we need to pay attention to. We feel that, you know, the V stands for vision, so long-term vision rather than short-term thinking. And then U, instead of uncertainty, will refer to understanding the market. Every real investor focuses on understanding the particular segment that they want to invest in. Is it hospitality? Then become a master in that. Is it commercial? Is it residential? Is it complexes? Is it lifestyle estates? You know, what is it that you want to invest in? You have to become a master and develop mastery in terms of competent knowledge, so that you can make the right investments and take advantage of the right opportunities in whatever segment that you want to play in. The C, instead of representing complexity for us, will refer to what we believe is very significant, which is collaboration. We believe that, you know, as the market continues to, as it were, adjust over the coming years, that we'll see that collaboration is a very important approach to investments, both at the development level, and I believe Mr. Adeshola referred to that, where, you know, in terms of creatively financing these developments, in addition to perhaps monies from the banks, that, you know, a landowner would contribute land, and other investors with the cash will bring in cash. And, you know, even in some cases, as Fine & Country has done in the past, it could be even the off-plan buyers who become, as it were, collaborators to make these developments actually work. And there are many angles to that, you know, we expound on in our upcoming Refine. And then finally, the A, instead of referring to ambiguity, for us reflects adapt. Adaptability is a word that obviously in this particular season that we're in, everyone, you know, there's a book, Adapt or Die. Adapt refers to creativity, which is what the theme is all about. Rethink, reimagine, refocus. And there's a sense in which it's important for investors to begin to adapt their solutions, adapt, you know, the product itself, what sort of housing, the types of systems, building systems, and what people actually require. Developers are going to start looking at libraries and estates, and, you know, start looking at the concept of well-being, even in workspaces, flexible, interesting, and all of those things. So using that framework, we can actually flip the negative impact of COVID, or this negative situation that we're in, and actually put on our thinking caps and become extremely creative, and, you know, by adapting our solutions, as it were, to the real demands of the users of real estate. On that note, I would just, you know, like to round up by saying that, you know, there are many segments, there are many opportunities, whether it's in the area of regenerating. The other day I was going past the Federal Secretariat. That building has been there, you know, and they're young investors, they're entry-level investors, homeowners, first-time home owners, and all of that. So the word A in VUCA, while representing adaptability, also refers to affordability and accessibility. And affordability is very critical in an economy where people have obviously reduced spending power. So whether it's in Ogun State, it's in Enugu, it's in Port Harcourt, it's in Abuja, or in Ikoyi, whatever location, that investors and developers are investing in, it's important that we put affordability at the heart of our solutions, which is really the critical catalyst that brings about, as it were, reimagining, rethinking, and creativity in terms of how we visit the solutions, or we deliver the solutions in real estate that we are looking to deliver. So that's, in a sense, our perspective at Fine and Country. You know, it's a summary. It's very extensive, but we have these materials, and we didn't want to use this situation, this particular webinar, to present all our thoughts on it. We thought we would get in our panelists who are experts, and our next webinar will be focusing on creative financing. We'll be looking at how to crack the funding and, you know, the funneling of private capital, both local and international, to make real estate something that is a very viable investment, you know, class for as many investors as possible. On that note, I would like to say a very big thank you. We're out of time. Administrators, we do have a survey. I'm just going to see if we have any last. Yes, we're looking at first-time home buyers. There are a couple of recommendations that we have, and Dr. Andrew will be talking to you about this in terms of tax breaks, perhaps, for first-time home buyers. And, you know, Professor Fabian referred to reducing the cost of acquisition. So what some other countries have done is to provide some measure of tax breaks, you know, some mortgage breaks and that sort of situation. But we're thinking long-term, structurally, can we begin to look at tax breaks for people perhaps who are buying properties below 50 million naira, or maybe 80 or 100 million naira, and all of that? That's something that, you know, as a company, we want to work with other stakeholders to begin to consider, because the concept of, you know, upper quartile and luxury real estate, while contributing to the economy, the real economy is at the middle and at the entry level. And that's where, you know, housing remains a critical need. Tax break also perhaps for developers who operate in, you know, these locations that are dealing with first-time home buyers or people who are operating remotely. So these are some of the considerations that we feel that their time has come, and that we will be engaging certainly all our panelists and other stakeholders to try and take forward. At this point, what I'd like to do is call for concluding comments from our panelists as we wrap this up. And if our coordinators have the survey ready, those of you, the guests, if you please just take the survey right away, and we'll get the final comments. Professor Fabian Ajogu, are you still here? If you are, please just give us your final comments while the guests, you know, do the survey.
Thank you very much for capturing the essence of the Refined Investors webinar. I think something has been taken away today, which is, number one, that we're in a difficult terrain and time, but we must take the opportunities that come from those challenges by looking at things differently. Just heard you say building libraries in residential estates, by the way, become zones that people working from home. So I think there are a lot of opportunities. Now is the time to go in. You go in low, and that's where the game is. And now is the time for think differently from, you know, from the perspective of the needs of the people that purchase. In all, I would like to say that the legal considerations they're still folding, but it pays prudent and proactive, and to deal with the things that could become points of dispute in future. And on that note, I'd like to thank you for inviting me, Fine and Country, and to my co-panel, done an excellent job. And I must mention Oralua, my colleague, who helped me put together some of the things that I've spoken to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Ajogu. Thanks for your concluding remarks. If I can get Dr. Andrew to please give us his concluding remarks.
Well, I'd like to thank Udo and Fine and Country and my panelists, and particularly all the people who've joined their time this morning. I would say at this stage that everyone on this call needs to do their best to help Nigeria get through this, keep the people around you safe, keep as many people as you can safe, be part of the solution. I mean, I think that when we look back on this, people are going to ask, what did you do in COVID-19 to get the nation through it? But also we need to look forward, as we said today. There's many opportunities individually, but you pursuing opportunities in Nigerian real estate also makes Nigeria stronger. And there were so many ideas that came out today from everyone on that. So we need to keep both that short-term lens and that long-term, longer-term lens at the same time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andrew. Mrs. Bola Adeshola.
Thank you very much, Udo. First and foremost, I appreciate the invitation to be part of this excellent and very engaging session. Great insights by all, and the questions again, provoked a lot of thought. So I think what we should do really is rethink our situation, reimagine the future, and refocus our energies. I advise people to create their own kaleidoscope and look through it and see what the possibilities are. In real estate investment, one typically makes money at the point of buying, which is that the bargains that may exist now are what we should be looking at. It's also important, as we said, to partner and to seek advice. Fine and Country, well done once again. Thank you very much for a wonderful and knowledge-gaining afternoon. Udo, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Adeshola. Do we have the survey? And okay, it's still in progress. We will just wait for the result of the poll. And while we're at it, most of us may know Cobhams. There's a video, there's a song that he's done on the coronavirus. While we're talking real estate, as a matter of fact, it's interesting. Yesterday, one of my daughters saw a post that I made, and she thought it was somewhat insensitive because I'm talking real estate investments and opportunities and all that. And I said, and I had to then, speak to her and educate her to say that even in the midst of war, there are people who are taking advantage of opportunities, but not to look at opportunities from the point of view as only benefiting yourself, but as Dr. Andrew said, that you're actually solving a problem, by providing those services and by taking advantage of opportunities. So do we have the poll ready? Okay, so talking about Cobhams, we know that when the midst of coronavirus, we've been, fortunately not seeing things as bad as, had been anticipated. We're still not out of the woods. It's important that everyone continues to keep safe and pay attention to all the guidelines by WHO and by, our various regulatory authorities, NCDC, and all the rules in place, washing our hands, obviously making sure that as we go back to work, that we actually put in place, safety protocols to protect not just ourselves, but our customers and our employees. So that's very important. We also want to remember that there are people who've been affected personally by this. And so that it's a responsibility that we all have to make sure that we continue to help to flatten the curve and certainly not to contribute to the spreading of this, very horrible virus. We were hoping to play Cobham's video, which is just a minute, but I believe the poll is in progress and we wanted to end and wrap up on that just as a reminder. Administrators, I see poll is still in progress because we have a lot of people. Is it possible to wrap it up and yes, details will be sent. I think this is a good time to also thank all our sponsors. Dulux, thank you very much. CAP PLC, thank you Grenadines Properties for supporting this. Thank you Kina Partners. Thank you to all our PwC Knowledge Partners, Kina Partners, Knowledge Partners for contributing. Mrs. Bola Adeshola, thank you so much. And so there is our poll result. Do you expect dramatic price adjustments, so discounts of existing in light of COVID, lower possibility? So the highest possibility is people are expecting 37%, no? Okay. Okay, so 37% expect quite a strong possibility. Okay, do you expect to see big opportunities? Yes, a lot of people expect to see big drops in prices. we're not, and then there was a question also about what's the timeline. You know, is it 0 to 6 months, or should you wait 6 months to 12 months? And the real advice, you know, for those who are looking to take advantage of well-priced, is what we prefer to call it, real estate, is for you to set your investment, guidelines, what we refer to as your investment playbook, and determine at what level. But for you to know that, you have to know obviously what the prices have been and what it could potentially be and all of that. So there's some aspect of this that requires some intelligent insight, but clearly there will be opportunities. Thank you very much for that, Paul. And if we wrap up with the video, which is exactly 1 minute and should take us to the end. Thank you. Alex, do we have the video? Otherwise, I want to wrap this up. Our speakers have been very kind, and all our guests, thank you very much. Okay. Okay, it appears we're having some technical glitches with regards to that video. At exactly, it's 1:59, in exactly 1 minute, I will wrap this up if we don't have that video. I just thought it was a very strong way to end, but we all know okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Adeshola, our chairman, for today's occasion. Thank you very much, Dr. Nevin, for your contribution and for always supporting. And thank you very much, Professor Ajogu. Thank you very much to all our guests. Okay, there's Cobams. That's fine. We can all watch it, and please just commit to going to watch it on YouTube. I'm sure even legally, you know, I'm not even sure that we actually have, now that I think of it. So Corona, no big passes. We go fight and we go win. That is the mindset that we must have. Finally, you need possibilities mindset, and you definitely need patience in this particular season if you're going to be an investor. Corona, not the virus, you know, that's worrying the human beings. But at the end of the day, do not allow fear to become a worse virus, because fear will disable you and you won't be able to make intelligent decisions. On that note, thank you very much to every single one who has been on this call. God bless you, and God bless Nigeria.